Well, welcome back once again. We're going to check in with Henry Rossov right now. He's standing by with Alison Esposito. Henry.
Okay, Grace, thank you very much. I'm here with Ms. Esposito. I just want to start by asking, is there anything from the debate that you'd want to clarify or add to or highlight? The floor is yours.
No, it was a phenomenal debate. It was a spirited debate. Two candidates who do love the country. The problem is how we go about policy. And as you heard from Congressman Ryan, he wants to talk a big game, but he's kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing because he talks about securing the border, but when he had the opportunity to vote to secure the border, he didn't do that. He voted against the Lake and Riley Act. He voted against the SAVE Act to stop illegal immigrants from voting in our elections. Again, he talks out of one side and then does something completely different. If he really wanted to ease the economic burden on our New Yorkers, he would stop the attack on energy. If he really wanted to ease the burden on our New Yorkers, he would have voted. Congressman Lawler and Congressman Molinaro put forth a bill that would have raised the SALT cap. He would have voted for that instead of playing partisan politics and listening to Hakeem Jeffries, who didn't want a win for the Republican Congress in an election year. He's playing games with New Yorkers, with the economy, with their prosperity, with their children's education. He never even addressed when I put forth the boys and girls sports. He's on board with that. Unfortunately, Pat Ryan doesn't represent the values of the Hudson Valley. They are hardworking values. We are a hardworking people that just want to go about our business, get our kids to school, build our small businesses, and be as prosperous as possible. We are overtaxed, overregulated, and that's because of Bidenomics, Biden-Harris administration policies, Green New Deal policies, all rubber-stamped by Pat.
What struck me was that each of you, to be fair, tried to paint each other as extreme, and you did so in a respectful manner, more respectful than some of the dialogues that we have in our political environment, so I'm thankful for that. But did you want to respond to any of the claims he made, perhaps about abortion or guns or your views on crime? I'm giving you a forum here.
So I appreciate that, and our political debates have to be respectful. That's what this country is founded upon, and we have to be able to agree to disagree, and we have to be able to put both sides into the pool of knowledge so that we're paddling in the right direction and not in circles. Pat is going to use words like MAGA and Trump and extreme because he doesn't have policy to stand on. So he has to paint me as this enemy. He has to use words and phrases like existential threat, which he did with Trump, which prompted an individual with mental illness. It created a moral imperative almost to take matters into their own hands. And that's what this dangerous rhetoric does. And Pat is just as guilty of that as the rest of the Biden-Harris administration when it comes to Trump. And if anybody was playing a drinking game during this, if they were drinking every time he said Trump or MAGA or extreme, they wouldn't be standing right now. Because, again, that's all that Pat Ryan has. He doesn't have policy to stand on, so he's got to paint me in a poor light. I want to support the American public. I want to secure our border. I want prosperity. I want lower taxes. I want to take care of our veterans and our seniors. It's really common sense, which is why I say this isn't going to be a red wave. People are sick of this. This is a common sense wave, a red, white, and blue wave. Independents, Democrats, and Republicans alike standing up and saying enough. Enough is enough.
Thank you, Ms. Esposito. We got to send it back to Grace now, but I appreciate it. Thank you for making the time for us. Grace, sending it back to you and JC.
Thank you, Henry, so much for that. And, well, what do you think about what Ms. Esposito just said?
Listen, it's what you expect. She's fire. When she comes in, comes in, she's a cop. And let me tell you, it's interesting to see her because there's no backing down from her MAGA Republican positions. And those Republican positions are popular in that area. So many of us in New York, we're looking at this like, are you kidding me? But she embraced Trump's positions clearly. And what we saw there now was what I think is going to work in many parts of that district. Look, that district is concerned about migrants. And the issue that they're concerned about migrants is people that they have not been vetted coming into their communities. And they're coming in large numbers. And quite frankly, they're creating a strain in many parts of that district because the communities now have to pay for housing, pay for school, pay for health care, pay for all of the pressures on the infrastructure alone that migrants are bringing in. And then, as you know, crime happens everywhere. But when new people are around and crime happens, it alerts the folks that are voting in that district. So she knows that, her campaign knows that. That is why you hear her mention migrants and immigration nonstop here. And one of the things I think that is interesting is one of the things that Congressman Ryan has to his advantage is he's pointing out how Republicans failed to pass a Republican bill that would have dealt with a lot of these issues. They said absolutely not. It was a bipartisan bill. But what Ms. Esposito does now is that she flips the script and she says, H.R. 1, that was your shot to close the border early on in your career, and you voted no. So she's putting that albatross right back on his neck. It's a very interesting way to debate, and I think that even when Henry asks her now, she is attempting to put that right on him. So you're looking at crime, immigration, and everything you hear is tied right to that. And lastly, one of the many reasons why she did so well last year as a lieutenant governor candidate was the crime issue and the progressive position on crime, whether it was getting rid of bail reform, lifting the age on folks that get arrested and not sending them to jail. That created an incredible environment in places where crime had seen an uptick in that district, where Congressman Zelda did well, she did well, and a lot of Republicans did well in that area because of the crime issue. So she knows that. So she's bringing a lot of those issues right back to the forefront, and it's going to resound well. Now, what we see from Congressman Ryan is that he continues to remind you, I am a moderate Democrat. I am about closing the border. I spoke to President Biden. I go against my party. Have you gone against your party, Ms. Esposito? That was a great part of the debate that Henry had asked. Do you disagree with any positions from presidential candidate Trump? And we saw very little of that, very little disagreement. So what we're seeing is him positioning himself as the independent Democrat who is strong on the border, who is going to be strong on crime, and who has...
And who called for Biden to step down.
And who, exactly. So he's showing that he has an independent streak. Fortunately for him, this district has a long history of being independent and voting Republican or Democrat. Very few districts in this country today are like this one, where you can go into the ballot box and vote Republican for president if you want, but then vote right for a Democrat for the House of Representatives, vote for a Democrat for the Assembly. You can do that in that district. Very few districts you'll have that kind of voter going in there and actually going from one party to the next.
That makes it also interesting. It's an interesting race that has also gathered national attention. And well, the candidates also talked about the affordable housing challenges New Yorkers are facing. Let's listen.
Stopping our attack on energy and making people more prosperous, bringing jobs back to the Hudson Valley so that people can afford to live here. Plus, we have to stop the out of control spending that brought inflation to a 40-year high.
With a lot of what Allison said, what I didn't hear, though, unfortunately, was any actual specific housing policy. This is something I've worked really hard on, both as county exec and now in Congress. I actually just authored 4 specific bills to bring down housing costs and boost housing supply for veterans, for seniors, for working people.
So from an audience point of view, I think she brought out certain points about what needs to be done. Right. But it didn't, to me, it didn't clarify this is my policy.
Yeah. She's a challenger. Yeah. She's a challenger, Grace. She's supposed to just throw everything at him. Everything she could imagine, and she did there just now. She even brought energy into the mix for the question on affordable housing. So when you're the challenger, your job is to say why and try to impeach your opponent by saying what you didn't do or how you failed. And she did that there. She's again touching to the heartstrings and the passions of people in the district that are angry.
Absolutely.
But what we saw in Congressman Ryan was again that policy position. So I proposed and I authored.
I did this.
But you know what happens? You have independent voters in that district that are like, wow, that's an interesting position. But a lot of people in that district are going to be like, authored? What are you talking about? What do you mean policy? What do you mean these details? I want to hear passion. I want to hear what you're going to do. And that's my concern with his approach. You know, I appreciate it because I'm an attorney, so I like to hear. So tell me about the bills that you authored, Congressman. But if I'm angry at the prices I'm paying and I'm angry about hearing about affordable housing coming into my district, Grace, listen. In that district, they're concerned. If you bring affordable housing, what does that mean? That means you're going to change the fabric of my community. That means you're going to let people from New York City come up here. We're already paying too much money. I don't want affordable housing in my district. So it's a very thin line between, you know, pleasing people that want to see more affordable housing and the reality of people that live in that district that don't want that in their backyard. And I think that that's going to be a very tough debate. I would like to see those authored legislation to see what exactly was in them. But that's a hot topic, and it's polarizing because you think about race and socioeconomic issues as well. Who are the people that are moving into my district, and how does that impact me? And those people are coming out to vote, and they're going to be very in tune into this issue. So I don't think they really care about what bills you authored. They want to hear that you're not going to bring any affordable housing that's going to attract people from New York City, and that you're not going to make it more expensive for me to live here, which is why Esposito talked about taxes in that answer. And that's what they want to hear.
Yeah.
So, pretty great debate, Grace.
Yeah,
I love watching
it was
I
great.
loved it.
Yeah, it was a great debate. It got heated, actually, when the candidates were asked about abortion.
Due to the Roe decision, and are widely supported and agreed upon by the American public. So with that much public support, I think we can and must get it passed. And unfortunately, I think you're going to hear from my opponent an incredibly extreme and out-of-touch view of this that is not about freedom, but it's actually about taking away freedom from many, many Americans.
Unfortunately, Pat Ryan lacks the integrity to tell the voters the truth. And he would love to make this entire election about abortion. So I'm going to be very clear with the voters. I do not advocate for, nor would I vote for, a federal abortion ban.
Well, there you have it. That was another hot topic. They really got into it. What did you think about that?
You lack the integrity. That was nasty. That was oof.
And at some point during the debate, he, Esposito called him liar several times.
Wow, I saw that. Again, if you're from here, you get that often. But that was a direct attack, especially considering how respectful this debate was. Look, what immigration and migrants is to Pat Ryan in this debate, abortion is to Esposito. It's your Achilles heel. That's the fact. The fact is that district and women in that district continue to be pro-choice. And they are very concerned about the decision coming out of the Supreme Court and the fact that it was President Trump who appointed the members of the Supreme Court that promised to be pro-life and get rid of Roe versus Wade. You can't hide that. And the fact is that that's who she supports for president again.
Do you think that's going to hurt her?
I think depending on, because I see a lot of Congressman Ryan's commercials, they talk about how he's a different type of Democrat. I would like to see how this abortion issue is going to be brought into the district, because if they're going to hit her on the fact that she is supporting a team that got rid of abortion, that would be my tactic for Congressman Ryan, and putting that Achilles heel right on her, because quite frankly, she's not holding back. Her commercials are clear. We just saw them on PIX11. Her commercials are talking about how weak he is on policing, that he joined to defund the police, all that stuff. She's not holding back. So I think it's time for him to put that Achilles heel and that albatross around her neck and say, your team got rid of abortion rights for women, and women in our district are concerned. Even Republican women support abortion rights, and they view a lot of these issues as being a problem. So when she says abortion is not on the ballot, abortion is actually on the ballot, and women are going to come out in large numbers. It depends, what issue is going to resonate more? Is it going to be migrant and immigration, or is it going to be the fact that abortion was taken away and it was her team's fault? I mean, that's Congressman Ryan's job to do, but this was an example when she's tough, and she came on hard.
We actually have to, joining our discussion right now, moderator Henry Rossa from the debate set. Welcome, Henry. Congratulations. What are your big takeaways from the debate?
Well, I was really struck by how different, I think you guys were talking about this before while I was getting ready to talk with Congressman Ryan, the different the styles were, but how they were both pugnacious when they wanted to be. You had Congressman Ryan kind of get into the details, be a little bit more soft-spoken, but when he wanted to, he spoke up. She didn't answer the abortion question. That is troubling. What she just said about guns is absolutely troubling. And then you had Ms. Esposito, who was on a little bit more all the time, but when she wanted to, we were in the middle of, I'm trying to remember the section we were in the middle of, and she tried to bring it back to abortion, back to migrants, and we had long left the section. I even turned to Mr. Ryan and said, do you want a response? And he said, I've asked and answered that several minutes ago. But it was cordial as well. We've had some debates that were not as cordial. What you don't see are the between-the-scene moments, and the two were very pleasant to each other. There was a handshake at the beginning and the end. The way we structure our debates, you just see them standing at the podium, so you don't really observe that in the style that we do them. They shook hands. They joked about the Yankees and the Mets, and, I thought everything was respectful. There wasn't any big interruptions, but they got their jabs in, and I think that's what we want in our American democracy, in these important disagreements in the important swing districts, and we tried to structure it that way. Both candidates were amenable to that, and I was appreciative as the moderator in that they followed the instructions, they got their back and forths in, and then we were able to move on and cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, and the timing was great. Also, you sort of like stopped them when needed to be stopped, and you gave them leadway when they needed to speak and talk back about subjects. JC, what are your thoughts on the way that everything panned out?
I think Henry did a great job, as I mentioned earlier in our discussion, Grace. Henry, the way you have had them answer the questions, you would not let up, and you had them answer the question. I think viewers won tonight. The viewers won tonight in this debate, without a doubt. One of the things that I wanted to make sure we address is, Pat Ryan is going into this race. He's raised 500% more money than Ms. Esposito going into this race. That's huge in this market, especially when you want to get your message out to viewers. So when you combine the performance of tonight's debate, it was very important for Ms. Esposito to come out swinging hard and making sure that Pat Ryan answers the questions that are going to dog him in this election, which are the economy and abortion.
Okay.
About the fundraising, if you could. It's very important to raise money in this district because this is technically the New York City TV market, but it's the far reaches of it, and it covers a very small portion of it. So you got to buy those big New York TV ads that they see on Long Island and New Jersey and places that you don't need them to see it. And so that fundraising advantage is not to be discounted. I also want to point out something. I dove a little bit deeper into our recent poll with Emerson College and The Hill. This district, just slightly, by like 1/10%, right now in the same poll, is going to former President Trump, which means I know there's a lot of undecided voters, but you do have Congressman Ryan out-punting his party's standard bearer and Vice President Harris. And so you're seeing, when we say which style will resonate, well, so far in the data, you are seeing the crossover voters so far go to him, according to the data, not to take sides here. Now, could that change? Are there a lot of undecideds? Absolutely. But just some information and some background there as I was digging deeper into the data from our latest poll.
That's great information. Thank you, Henry, so much. Great job once again. And thank you for making time to stay with us so late. I know you have to head home now.
Of course.
See you next time. Well, JC, final thoughts?
No, I think that this was a great debate. I think the answers were phenomenal. I think obviously you're going to want to hear some more details coming out of the challenger, but that's not going to happen. In very few races do you hear the challenger come on in like a policy wonk. I think PIX11 did a great job. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you for being with us once again, and thank you to Henry and both candidates as well. That does it for us. I'm Grace Gomez. Thank you for being with us. Stick with PIX11 for all your local election coverage. And remember, you can always check with PIX11.com and our streaming service, PIX11 Plus. Of course, have a great day.